Good morning, everyone. As you can see, because I'm standing, this is going to be a little different service than our usual services. This morning I'm fulfilling a promise I made a while back, which was to do a series of talks about the man Edgar Cayce, who I have stated many times I believe is the most significant man, second most significant man who ever walked the earth. I had planned to start this series with an excellent 20-minute video, but unfortunately I was informed a short while ago that we cannot show this video to the people who are watching this live stream at home. But if you who are watching this live stream at home, just look down, scroll down on your screen, you will see a link that you can click on, and that will bring you to the video I will be showing everyone here in the sanctuary. And it is definitely worth watching. It's an excellent video on the life of Edgar Cayce. Just a few facts before we get started and watch the video. Edgar Cayce lived in the body from March 18th, 1877, and left until he left his body behind on January 3rd, 1945. In the course of his life, he gave 14,400 trance readings in which he diagnosed people suffering with sundry chronic illnesses and prescribed remedies that healed them, even though he only had an 8th grade education and no medical training whatsoever. He also gave readings involving people's past lives, that's reincarnation, and the karma, good and bad, that resulted from those lives. Many of the readings he gave were for people living in another state altogether. It's, if you're not really aware of Edgar Cayce's work, you should know as you go forward, and I do this series. We're talking about a phenomenal human being who could lay down in a room with some people there, go into what they considered to be something like a sleep state. It was kind of a trance state. And they would just have to receive from someone in the room the name and address of the person who the reading would be done for. And then the source would come through and it could diagnose that person's body and give remedies for healing. Just the most extraordinary elements involving this clairvoyant, who was tested over and over again by the medical community, the legal community, and had done things that no other human being, at least in our time, could possibly do. So, the source of information that came through while Cayce was in trance was referred to, or it was the universal intelligence that was referred to as the source. And so you'll be hearing about that over the period of time that I'll be doing this series. This video about Cayce that you're about to watch corroborates what I have read, believed, and applied throughout the last 50 years of my life. It is a great video you're going to be watching, and I do suggest you do hit that link and watch it yourselves at home, although I'll be reiterating much of the information over the next couple of weeks that he was involved in bringing forth into the world. Okay, can we have the video, please? in France. And so they called the pharmacy, and the pharmacist that worked there looked through all that he had. He never heard of it. I think it had some kind of a name like the oil of coke or coal, something like that. And so they could not get it because the pharmacist himself couldn't find it and never heard of it. They did a third reading. Edgar Sayce said, call the pharmacy, tell the pharmacist that in the shelves in the back room, the third shelf down from the top, which also contains milk of magnesia and a number of other things, right behind there, you will find this bottle of medicine. And they did. And it was shipped here to the person that needed it. You have to give it up. You have to give it up. There is no way to deny this kind of thing taking place. When they say that the source spoke through Edgar Cayce, and the source was this universal intelligence, you can go along with it, and you can doubt it, but then you get to a place in going through the Edgar Cayce readings and the work and the healings that people claim took place, and you have no other way to decide whether or not the information that came through him, this extraordinary, expansive amount of information that came through him, was authentic. This you should know, whatever came through Cayce, whatever he said even in his waking state, he came to believe himself. He didn't, at first, accept and believe that this information coming through about astrology and the effects it has upon a person's awareness in life, and also about their past lives, he was really concerned about it. In fact, it caused him a great deal of pain because he was a traditional, fundamental Christian who taught Sunday school his whole life. When this kind of information started coming through him in these readings, and he had no awareness of what was coming through him until he came out of the trance state and looked at the transcript that the girl taking shorthand had written and then wrote out the longhand for him to read, he did not know what came through him. But when he started to read about the things that he was saying in that trance state, it concerned him grievously. And so it took him a long time to finally accept that the information was authentic and it came from a source that was, in effect, benevolent. And the information was, in effect, necessary. So this is how I began the spiritual journey with Norma. We had, I had received a book from a friend of mine who, he was one of the first street musicians, if not the very first, back in New York City. And somebody wanted to, he contacted me and said somebody wants to write a movie about me. They want to do a movie about my life. And you know me the best, so could you write a spec script, which means not for any money? Will you write a script that I can submit? I said, no, I'm not writing anymore. He said, please, just talk to me. I said, well, I'm not going to be writing anything. And I said, if you want to talk to me, you can see me at the Horn and Heart Art Cafeteria after midnight tonight. That's where I hung out when I was going through a serious state of depression in my life because I didn't see anything that had any meaning. In the Horn and Heart Art Cafeterias, I would ask the people that were homeless, which many of them went there at that time. They didn't have homeless shelters like they have today. But in the Horn and Heart Art Cafeteria, you could get a cup of coffee for 10 cents. And you could sit at a table for hours and then fall asleep even, and nobody would bother you. And I would talk to these people, and I would ask these people, many of them very old and had lived a long time, I would ask them, was there ever a time in your life that you thought life had meaning? That there was a really honest and necessary reason to get up the next morning? And they would tell stories. Most of their stories wound up talking about how they had a life and they had a good position. Some of them had careers, and some of them made a lot of money. But they started drinking, and the alcohol took hold of them, and they lost their families, many of them. And some of them were veterans who couldn't sleep anyway at night. And so I was searching, and then finally my friend showed up to meet with me at the Horn and Heart Art Cafeteria, and he handed me a book, and he said, this is the book you asked about. I didn't ask about any book. I only told him I'm not writing his movie. I'm not writing movies at all. I'm done. But he handed me this book, Many Mansions. And it had answers that I needed. It intimated at a meaning, a reasonableness for so much of the insanity that takes place in the world. And so the book actually was the first stepping stone for me out of the strictly limited materialistic thinking of the world. And then I discovered that there was a small center that existed in New York City. And Norm and I attended that center. And for years we did dream interpretation, meditation, discussions. And some of the things that took place at the ARE Center were themselves mystical beyond. And I'm going to share some of that as I continue on with this series on Edgar Cayce. And if you've tuned back in, I do hope you have seen that video. If not, you can still go to it. And definitely it's worth watching because it is so clearly stated about the life of this incredible human being. And we may yet see a feature-length movie produced. And I can tell you that many people over the years, myself included, over the years have attempted to make that movie about the life of Edgar Cayce. And today you could make a series, which it would require because so much that came through him would require a series. But so many people, and I tried to get the rights to the movie. I spoke directly to his son, Hewlin Casey, many, many, many years ago. I had no background, no credentials, and so I had no chance of getting a chance to market that film. But I think it may still happen. And there are great, great books. Today, I used to recommend There Is a River. Many Mansions is a book that I started with. And I think you could still get a copy of it. But for me, the best book at that time was There Is a River by Thomas Shagru. And then since then, there have been The Sleeping Prophet. And as I said, there have been 30 books, some about reincarnation, some about the Akashic Records, where everything we say, do, and think is recorded. I know this stuff is so far beyond our ordinary way of thinking. And all I can say to you is, he is the most authentic, clairvoyant, psychic that ever lived. This was a man that could not and would not lie. So, as we go forward now, there's like many books, but a recent one was written about 8 years ago that I find to be the most detailed, incrementally great book about Edgar Casey's life. And it was written by a man who went to Virginia Beach, Virginia, to research all of the readings, talk to any people that might have still been alive that knew Edgar Casey, and to compile all the information he would need to debunk his miracle abilities. He went there to debunk Edgar Casey. He certainly spent over a year, possibly 2, before he even wrote his book. But then he was an advocate of this extraordinary man, Edgar Casey. The title of that book is, in my opinion, the best ever written about him. And the title of it is An American Prophet, written by Sidney Kirkpatrick. I know you might be interested in it, and we unfortunately, I checked on the way in. We only have one copy of it left on the shelves. But go into the office if you want to read that book and sign up for it. And we'll certainly get you a copy. I want to conclude this talk, just before we do a brief meditation, with these 2 points that are reiterated throughout the Casey information. Can we have this first one, please? This is in reading 2629-1. No urge surpasses the individual will of an entity. That birthright of each soul, that gift of the creative forces that makes or causes the individuality in an entity. The ability to know itself, to be itself, and yet one with the creative forces, the source, God. Take this back again, please. Know that no urge surpasses the individual will of an entity. That birthright of each soul, that gift of the creative forces that makes or causes the individuality in an entity. The ability to know itself, to be itself, and yet one with the creative forces, the source, God. Okay, can we have the next PowerPoint, please? You'll see with that there, which is reiterated throughout the readings, that some people think because of the Course in Miracles that said, the author of the Course in Miracles stated that there is no reincarnation. Okay, you can take that for whatever it's worth. I still believe the Course in Miracles to be one of the great sources of truth. However, I do not accept that particular thought that was expressed by the author of A Course in Miracles. I believe we have an individual soul, we have free will, and we can come to know ourselves as being oneself, but also in alignment with God. This is in reading 5749-14/4. Should the Christ consciousness be described as the awareness within each soul, imprinted in pattern on the mind and waiting to be awakened by the will of the soul's oneness with God? Casey's answer, correct. That's the idea exactly. The Christ consciousness is a universal consciousness of the Father Spirit. The Jesus consciousness is that man builds as a body worship. In the Christ consciousness, then, there is the oneness of self, self's desires, self's abilities, made in at one-ment with the forces that may bring to pass that which is sought by an individual entity. Can we take this back again, please? Should the Christ consciousness, which you hear me speak about all the time, it reconciles a lot of limited things, thoughts, in the spiritual work. Should the Christ consciousness be described as the awareness within each soul, imprinted in pattern on the mind and waiting to be awakened by the will of the soul's oneness with God? Correct, Casey says. That's the idea exactly. The Christ consciousness is a universal consciousness of the Father Spirit. The Jesus consciousness is that man builds as a body worship. In the Christ consciousness, then, there is the oneness of self, self's desires, self's abilities, made in at one-ment with the forces that may bring to pass that which is sought by an individual entity. Okay, I think that is the, I have a third one. I guess we might just go ahead and skip this. We'll let this be our meditation. And we'll have our discussion in our discussion room, which is in the bookstore, so that any of you that have any questions can come in. We'll discuss whatever you want to discuss. Can have anything to do with this particular talk or session, or anything else you want to talk about that has to do with spiritual truth. Can we have this third PowerPoint? This is from the memoirs of Edgar Casey himself on page 228. What is important is how your belief has changed your attitude toward your fellow man or toward God. I choose to believe that each one of us has an individual soul, that there is one spirit, the Spirit of God, going through each and every one. And that makes each and every one of us akin. That makes all life and nature akin. For life in every form is dependent upon that force we call God. For as matter came into being, it was permeated with the Spirit of God that gives life, with its ability to carry itself on and make of itself that which has been determined by God that it should be. Man who was chosen to be one with God and a companion with him from the beginning, as Adam chose rather to go his own way. But God has prepared a way through the Christ that we might be more conscious at all periods of our development of the life of God that is within us. Let's just take a moment to be aware that we are always in the presence of that greater intelligence. And we were in that presence today as we went through this and opened ourselves to the beautiful and miraculous beliefs and the ideals that were revealed through this prophet, Edgar Casey. And for this, we do give thanks. And we pray to be open and receptive to this presence in our lives more and more, that we can arrive in that identification that was the goal and is the goal of every soul, to become a conscious co-creator with the living intelligence and love that we call God. Amen. We'll take an offering for unity now. As we're getting ready to do this, I invite all of you that have been watching this on the screen, live stream, tune in next Sunday, because I'm going to be going through each one of these areas that were discussed in this video. But do see the video. It's an excellent one. And you could do as Casey recommended, support financially. This came through the readings. The source of your spiritual journey. And you can do that by supporting Unity of Boulder. Everyone here can bring into their hands those gifts they'd like to make to Unity, and let's bless them with this offering prayer. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give. And so it is. And you can join me now, please. We dedicate this tithe to the will and the work of the Spirit of truth, the Spirit available to each of us, the Spirit that joins all of us. We dedicate this tithe to the victory of the Spirit of truth. Amen. Okay, you're all invited. Listen, we have refreshments if you want to just grab a cup of tea in Fellowship Hall. That's through these doors to your right. If you want to join our discussion, go through these doors to your left into the bookstore. There's a room off the bookstore with a circle of chairs, and I'll see you there in a couple of minutes.